Hi there, beautiful people. So I'd like to share a few thoughts about an issue that we're experiencing in a global way in the world these days, which is this story of polarity and this polarization and divisive experience that we're all having within our cultures and within our societies, and how how it's manifesting in very exaggerated ways that I obviously recognize as being necessary in some way, but I see as being a greater problem as well, where family members feel divided because of their views about certain topics, where friends or school colleagues at work don't feel like they can share their beliefs or thoughts or ideas through fears of being ostracized or judged in a strong way. And there's this strong ideologies or beliefs about what is right and wrong that I'm not saying is necessarily bad to have, or that we should sit on the fence and not hold any strong beliefs. But when our strong beliefs create judgmental reactions, when we get triggered by anybody or anything with anything that looks like an alternative or different or opposite belief than the one that we're having, this trigger is a call for something. It's a call for awareness. It's a call for questioning why we're being triggered so strongly, or what is that negative emotional response really all about. And I know, I do work on social media, so I see a lot of people sharing and voicing lots of ideas that create more of this polarization and promote it in different ways by throwing out judgments and highlighting problems and showing how wrong this is and how bad that is. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that this type of finger pointing activity is a very easy thing to do. It's very easy to join a team and to point at the other team and go, oh, look at how wrong you are, look at how bad you are. It's much more difficult to sit down and to listen to each other, to sit down at a table, to sit down in the same room, and to genuinely be open to find common ground, for example, to listen to the real fears and the real worries and the real doubts that different people have, even if they have, we categorize people so strongly. We say, oh, if you believe in this, then you must be a bad person. You can insert whatever you want into those quotation marks, but we have these strong judgments, and if you're a bad person, well, then I can't talk to you. I've got nothing to say to you. You're completely wrong. You're completely stupid. You're completely uneducated. You are part of the problem and not the solution. And there's this superiority that steps in. It's very difficult to point fingers at somebody else without feeling superior in some way or another, either more clever, more educated, and the ego jumps in that moment. And it brings me to ask this question that, it's a famous question that asks, what would love do in this situation? What would love say in this situation? How would love act in this situation? And we don't ask that question to ourselves. We don't challenge our own beliefs. If we look at ourselves, and the history of our own minds and what we've believed in the past, we've been wrong 1,000 times. We are not exclusively right all the time, even though my mind more than anybody else probably wants to be right. I've been so wrong in so many ways, and yet even in that wrongness there's been something beautiful. There's been a lesson, there's been a challenge, there's been a growth, there's been something beautiful come from it. So was it really wrong, or was it my judgment that's wrong? And there's a little bit of this going on in the world today. There was a lot of this going on in the world today. But what would love do? We all have, I think we all have the common ground of wanting to love ourselves, wanting to appreciate who we are, wanting to genuinely feel worthy about who we are. Everybody can relate to that. And yet, a lot of our actions and some of our speech as well is focused on how we can make somebody else less worthy, and how we can point a finger at somebody who is less well than we are. And the ego loves that, because it kind of gives us a boost up, It gives us a feeling of being higher if we're pointing at something we're judging as being lower than us. And yet this divisiveness, or this separating energy and judgmental mind, is not part of the problem at all. I mean, not part of the solution, but part of the problem completely. And whatever we do to the outside, whatever triggers us outside, is always going to be a reflection of something that's triggering us on the inside, and it's going to be harder to find. The more we focus on the outside world and focus on what's wrong with the outside world, instead of what could be right with the outside world, and instead of sharing, ideas on social media about what's wrong and what's bad and what's stupid and what's ugly and what's, why can't we just send and share ideas about what both sides of any story can admit are the solution? Why can't we share something that's beautiful, that comes from our hearts, that comes from what love would say, that comes from our humble experience, or our, owning our own vulnerability or our own ability to be wrong? Why can't we share that? Because I don't know about you, but if somebody points a finger at me, especially when I was younger, but if somebody points a finger at me and starts saying, hey, you're wrong, you're bad, I'm not going to listen to that person. That person is not a safe person to listen to. We want to change the world. Don't point fingers at what is wrong in the world. You should point fingers at yourself, show how you've been wrong and how you've learned something beautiful from being wrong, and how you've changed your perspective, because that's what people will look at. That's when people will start listening. That's when people will actually want to learn from you, from your example, because they can relate to being wrong. Everybody can relate to feeling like that. And when our externally focused, judgmental mind is strengthened, and we strengthen the beliefs that are very judgmental towards the world, you can be guaranteed that there'll be an inner judgmental dynamic taking place, with lots of internal criticism coming out inside of your own relationship with yourself. You can't really have one without the other. And so this is where the choice is. If we want to love ourselves, can we be really strongly judgmental towards the outside world? Now, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't be critical, and healthy criticism is beautiful, and that's what can encourage us to grow. But when that criticism is come with outright black and white statements, outright judgmental mind, where we create big walls and big division, we're deepening the chasm between different aspects of society, and whatever we do and whatever we create in that outer world will reflect what we're doing in our own inner world. If you think you're creating strong separation between yourself and a whole group of people that don't think the right thoughts or the correct things, and you believe that that's not affecting you, I really think that's a different level of insanity, and we believe that. We are a little bit insane sometimes in that way. So let's find some sanity together. Let's be proper rebels. Let's rebel against these separate, divisive ideologies, ways of thinking, and ways of acting, and let's try to focus on bringing people together, bringing a union between opposites, finding that reconciliation with all paradoxes. See if we can find common ground, see if we can listen to that part of us inside of us that we don't want to listen to, as well as listen to that part of us outside that we think is wrong. Because even in the darker self-expression, the darker external expressions of life, there is some important message. And it's not what the message is saying. It's not you're a bad person. That's not the message. It's, hey, there's something beautiful we can change here. Let's look at that change and let's make it. What would we really like? Oh, what does that look like? What does that look like me inside of myself? And what does that look like me with the world on the outside? Just a few musings about this divisive story that we're all experiencing, and I'd love to hear your own experiences as well. But let's rein in on our judgment, especially our flat judgmental nature towards the outside world, and let's see if we can really rebel against even any aspect of our culture that might be telling us to take teams and might be telling us to say, hey, no, they're right, we're wrong, and might be trying to imprison people for their beliefs, which is kind of scary in a way. And let's see if we can listen to ourselves first of all, and really be humble enough to open up and find some common ground with the world. I'd love to hear your experience, and share this if you think it's a beautiful message. And if not, then challenge me and throw some ideas down. I'd love to hear your points of view. Much love.